The Danish Brunsviger Cake is a sweet yeast dough baked with a rich, buttery brown sugar caramel sauce dotted throughout and along the top and edges. While called a cake, it resembles more of what an American might refer to as a coffee cake or another version of a cinnamon roll. If you like coffee cake and cinnamon rolls, you'll absolutely love this sweet, buttery Danish cake. While the Danish Brunsviger roots are in German baking, this specific cake originated on the Danish island of Fyn. Fyn is an old historic Viking island, also known for the birthplace of fairy tale author Hans Christian Andersen, who of course authored many of Disney's stories like The Little Mermaid. This Danish cake is often served as a birthday cake in Denmark. For the kiddos, it's commonly shaped and baked into a boy or girl called a kamen, and topped with candy for decoration prior to serving. For the dough ingredients, you'll need milk, granulated sugar, yeast, all-purpose flour, salt, and butter. For the caramel sauce, in addition, you'll need brown sugar and vanilla extract. We'll begin by activating the yeast. You want to add 295 milliliters, which is the same as 1 1/4 cups of whole milk. I prefer whole because that richness keeps the bread soft, moist, and chewy. So you're going to add that to a measuring cup, and you want to heat it in the microwave 30 to 60 seconds until it reaches 100 to 110 degrees. Go ahead and measure out 50 grams of sugar, which is 1/4 cup. Let's stick that in a bowl. Then in a small bowl, we're going to add 14 grams, which is 4½ teaspoons or 2 packages of active dry yeast. From the sugar that we measured out, you're going to take only 1 tablespoon. The tablespoon helps to activate the yeast a little quicker. We're going to add that to the yeast, and we're going to set the remaining sugar aside. Give that a quick stir to combine those two. From our warm milk here, we're going to remove about 59 milliliters, and we're just going to eyeball that, and it's about 1/4 cup. Stir it well, and then we're just going to set it aside for about 10 minutes to activate, becoming bubbly and frothy. Let's make the dough. So using a stand mixer bowl or a large bowl if you're going to mix with a spoon and then knead by hand, you're going to add 480 grams, which is 4 cups of flour. If you're measuring your flour using a measuring cup, just make sure that you fluff your flour and scoop it into the measuring cup and then level it off. We're also going to add the remaining sugar from which we measured out and then took 1 tablespoon for our yeast. And then I'm going to add 3 grams, which is 1/2 teaspoon of salt, because I'm going to be putting salted butter in my recipe. If I were using unsalted butter, then I would add 4½ grams, which is 3/4 teaspoon. You don't want to add more salt than you really need for a yeast dough. And then just stir or whisk the ingredients to combine. Okay, we're going to set that aside. You want to dice up 113 grams of butter, which is 8 tablespoons or 1 stick, and we're going to add it to the milk. The reason why I say dice, it's because we want this butter to melt, and it melts more quickly and easily if it's diced in small chunks, because it's just less mass around each piece to be heated up. Now you want to heat this in the microwave for 30 seconds and stir until the butter is just melted. Okay, with your bowl on the machine and your dough hook attached, we're going to turn the machine on low. Notice our yeast is nice and activated. Go ahead and pour that in. Our butter is nice and melted, and our mixture is no more than 110 degrees. We're just going to pour the butter and milk mixture in. Scrape down the bowl edges as needed. You're going to knead on low to medium speed for 10 minutes, or turn this out onto a work surface and knead by hand for 10 minutes. The dough should be tacky and pull away from the bowl. And mine is pulling away from the bowl now, as you can see. It should not be sticky. So if it is sticky, add another tablespoon of flour. If you see flour in the bowl and it's not being absorbed, go ahead and add another tablespoon of water to it. So either flour or water, depending on the consistency of your dough. After 10 minutes, whether you're kneading by hand or using the machine, let's take a look at the dough. Okay, notice it's just soft, it's super soft. It's tacky, but it's not sticky. This is a really nice brioche-style buttery dough. You want to mound the dough in the bottom of the bowl. If you were kneading by hand, just place it in the bowl. And then, even though it already has butter in it, I'm just going to go ahead and spray the sides and the top with a little bit of oil because we are going to let it sit and rise, and we just want to keep it from developing any kind of a crust on the outside. So I'm just going to roll it around in that oil and then place a piece of plastic wrap or a towel over the top. Sit it in a warm area like over the stove, under a light or something, for about 30 minutes to an hour to double in size. It's time to pan the dough. That's right. There's no shaping, no rolling dough. It's super, super simple. I love this recipe because it's not only incredibly good, but oh my goodness, it's so easy too. So traditionally, this bread is baked in a square pan. So the only square pans I own are 8x8s. You can find 16x16, and that's probably the perfect size for this, but I'm going to use two 8x8. You can also use a 9x13. That should be fine too, because I know most of us in America have 9x13-inch pans. Square is best, rectangle is fine. So just grease your pan, and I'm just going to use cooking spray for that just because it's super easy, but you could use butter since that's the main fat in this dish. It'll make it even buttery. But since I'm going to be lining my pans with parchment paper, why waste the butter? And I'm going to line my pans with parchment paper. So you don't have to do this, but it just makes it so much easier for the caramel to stay in the cake, and also to lift the cake and pull it out of the pan. So I do like parchment paper for this recipe so that your parchment paper sits flush. I like to take some scissors and just cut the corners of my paper all the way down to where it touches the pan. And so since we have the cooking spray, then the paper is going to adhere to the cooking spray, and we don't have any weird creases and flaps going on in our bread. And then once you've cut the corners, then you have these little flaps, and they sit flush with the pan. You could trim off the flaps if you want to, like this, if you find them a bit annoying. Okay, so that's one pan. Notice how perfectly flush the paper sits. We don't need to add grease to the paper because there's going to be enough of it in the actual dish. And then just set your pans aside until you're ready to put the dough in. Okay, check it out. Our dough has doubled in size. That really was like 30 minutes, so it doesn't take long at all, particularly if you have a warm environment. So we're just going to release it from the pan. Easy removal here. And if you're using like one pan, like a 16x16 or 9x13, just pop this in the pan. That's it. That's all you have to do. If you are dividing it between two pans like me, then you'll need to divide it. So I'm just going to get a quick weight to see how much it is. It's 933 grams. So I'm just going to divide it in half as good as I can. Whether you're dividing it or not, place it in your pan like so. Then you're just going to use your fingers and press the dough out to the corners of the pan. If it retracts a little bit, then just pause, let it get used to its new shape, and then begin pressing it out again. It'll eventually stay in its shape. Okay, so that's one. It's that simple. And then if you're using two pans, then do the same for the other one. Okay, we're going to cover the pans with the towel and just let them sit for about 20 minutes in a warm area to rise, not double in size, just do a little bit of rising. And in the meantime, we'll make the caramel sauce. In a small saucepan, you're going to add 113 grams of diced butter. Dicing just makes it melt a little easier and quicker. We're going to add 255 grams, which is 1 1/3 cups packed. This is brown sugar. Turn your burner on to low heat. Stir frequently, and we want the butter to melt, the brown sugar to somewhat dissolve, but everything should be very hot, but no boiling should occur. Notice our butter is mostly melted, so we're just going to let it continue to melt and heat up. Well, not traditional to this Danish cake. If you wanted more of a coffee cake, a holiday spiced cinnamon roll flavor, you could add at this point ground cinnamon. You could use British mixed spice, and I have a recipe linked below if you're interested in making your own. You could also add a pumpkin or apple pie spice, same amount. Since I'm following the Danish tradition here, I am not adding any spice to my caramel mixture here. Now that the butter is all melted and it is mixed well with the brown sugar, we're gonna add in 60 milliliters, which is 1/4 cup of milk. I'm using whole milk for the richness. This is gonna take about 5 minutes. We don't want this to boil, but we do want the sugar to dissolve and the butter to mix in well. All of the sugar is dissolved. I don't see any granules remaining. So turn off the heat, remove the sauce from the heat. We're gonna pour in 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Stir to combine it, so at least it stops bubbling. We need to set the sauce aside for about 5 minutes or so to cool slightly. Now, I like to pour my sauce in a bowl, a clean bowl here, small one, just to help it cool down a little quicker. Preheat your oven to 400 degrees. I have my caramel sauce sitting aside, waiting to cool just a bit. And our dough in the pans has puffed up and risen some, so we're ready for the next step. We're going to use our fingers and we're gonna make dimples all over the dough like you would focaccia. So focaccia is use 3 fingers kind of curled up like a triangle and you're just poking it through. So you want to poke enough holes so it pretty much touches the bottom. You want to poke all the way through to the bottom, but you want those holes to be very deep because this is where the caramel is going to sit as it bakes, and we want to have that caramel sort of baked throughout the dough. You also want to make sure that you get those edges because we want that caramel to sit on the edges as well. I get dimple happy, but I really like those crevices because this bread is going to rise even though you have lots of dimples in there. It will rise around the dimples and even in part of the dimples. So to me, you can't have enough dimples. We're ready for the caramel now. If your caramel has solidified just a little bit on the top, just stir it around. You're just going to spoon the caramel all over the dough. Now, instead of weighing it, measuring it, since I'm using 2 pans here, I'm just going to do 1 ladle at a time per pan, and that'll help even it out. If you're just using 1 pan to make this, then you just use all of it and spread it around. Okay, I want to give you a suggestion. Now, because that caramel is still warm, it already started to puff up the dough. So what you could do is you could go back with your fingers. It's going to be messy, but you can redefine those dimples just to make sure that that caramel gets pushed down into the dough. Again, messy, but it does work. And I still think you need to do the dimples before. You need those holes for the caramel to seep down before it starts puffing up again. We're going to place the pans in the preheated oven and bake for 35 to 40 minutes until golden brown and bubbly on top. If you're using 1 large pan, like a 9x13 or 16x16, bake an additional 5 to 10 minutes. Check it out. It's hot out of the oven, nice and golden brown on top. The caramel has kind of crunchified itself on the top. You can see the holes from the dimples where the caramel is sitting and all around. So we'll let them cool for a few minutes and then we'll lift them out of the pans and dig right in. Okay, our cake is still warm, but you can go ahead and remove it from the pan. Notice because we had it contained in the paper, not a whole lot oozed out in the pan. We do have a little bit of caramel on the side there. What I like about having this in a small square is that, go check out the bottom of that, it's nice and brown. A little bit of caramel at the bottom. Is that in a small square, you can actually place it on a serving plate and you can serve it like this to your guests, particularly if you're making it for like a breakfast, coffee cake, or even a birthday cake, that would be nice. I'm going to, however, cut it on a board and then we can place it on the serving plate. So you can cut actually large slices here, and I think that works well for this, is just cutting it in half. Okay, let's take a look at the inside of that. Look at that nice caramel. Kind of swirl throughout. You can see some on the bottom. You can see them within the crevices. And then I'm going to cut 3 squares. I guess it's more of a rectangle per half. You're going to get a total of 6 per pan. And these are nice, healthy servings. Okay, just look at every piece that you see here. Look at all the caramel throughout. So it's a really soft bread. It's cooked well through. You've got a little bit of crunchiness of the caramel on the exterior. You've got a nice smooth bottom, brown bottom. This is a really incredible dimple top, crusty toffee edges, melted caramel throughout with a rich, buttery, soft, light and airy dough. It's an incredible bread for dessert or breakfast. This heavenly tasting Danish cake can easily be described as a yeasty, light, airy, buttery, enriched bread with pockets of rich, buttery, soft, and gooey caramel. If you're familiar with cinnamon rolls or monkey bread, also known as pull-apart bread, this would be very close. particularly if you add cinnamon to the caramel sauce. If you're looking for a holiday spiced morning coffee cake, add British mixed spice, pumpkin pie, or apple pie spice to the caramel sauce. There is absolutely nothing healthy about this sweet treat. There's a reason the Danes call it a cake. It is currently my new favorite dessert, and I can't wait to have a slice or two. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing. Until next time, go bake the world.